Good morning. My name is Marcia Stromgren, and you've tuned in to Just the Facts. I have in the studio today candidate Kuehn, who is running for the 1st District, 709 School District. Thanks for coming in today, Kurt.
Thanks for having me, Marcia.
Nice to have you here.
Nice to
I'd
be
like
here.
to know a little bit about you first, because everybody else I interview, I've had some background with them, but since we haven't had a chance to talk, I'd like you to tell the public and myself a little bit about yourself and why you're running for the school district.
Okay, I'll give you a short sketch of my life. I grew up on the North Shore. I graduated from Two Arbors High School.
Okay.
And after that, I enlisted in the Air Force. I worked as a security policeman in the Air Force. And I came back to Duluth and continued that job up at the Air Guard base as a civilian contractor until I took a job with the St. Louis County Sheriff's Department as a corrections officer, and I worked there until my retirement. As far as why I'm running, I care about my community, and I started following the school board back in the Red Plan days, and I didn't like what I was seeing in the boardroom and how people were being treated and how minority voices or any opposing voice was trying to be silenced, and I don't see that as good leadership. And I think the best way to fight against bad leadership is to lead yourself, which is why I went into the service. It's why I chose public safety as a career field, in part to avoid people that shouldn't be doing it or maybe don't have the temperament to be doing it from doing it. If that makes sense.
And it doesn't sound to me like you have a political motive to do this. It's the service attitude that you have experienced in the past, and now you want to continue to offer that to the community. I think that's very commendable that you step forward. Do you have family members in the school district, children or anything like that?
I don't. I have 4 grown daughters and 18 grandchildren.
And are any of them in this area?
They all live in Superior.
Oh.
But I did send 2 stepsons through the Duluth system, through Woodland and East.
Okay. So then you had some first-hand experiences. Right. And how long ago was that?
They graduated right around the turn of the century.
Oh.
So it's been a while.
It's been a while. Okay, well, the history of this Duluth School District goes back long before me. I graduated from Denfeld, and I got an education. There was none of this disparity between the East and the West that there is today, and perhaps you've seen some of that. Would you want to explain in your own view what you feel is going to be the impact of this not graduating kids or giving them a diploma and yet they're not prepared to go out there into society? You ever thought of the impact of that?
I have, and I read a study recently that said that children of color, children in poverty that graduate from high school are 2 to 4 years behind their peers, 2 to 4 grade levels. And is it any wonder that they score lower on ACT? Why they have trouble getting into 4-year colleges? They have 2 to 4 years less education. And that's a huge problem. And as far as East and West, I think the way the building plan was, the way it set things up, it actually made it worse. And we're seeing that now. And we have to figure out some way to address that issue. I think that's one of the top 3 issues, is addressing the inequity East to West, the achievement gap, and our budget, which it's people have funny ideas about these things. I mean, a fellow wrote into the paper a couple days ago, and he wanted us to stop being distracted by the perceived financial problems.
Oh.
Yeah. When I responded to it on Facebook, that was what I started with. Where do I start? Because later in his piece he wrote that let's fix our schools first, and then we'll attack the budget. We'll tackle the budget.
Oh, so we don't have to use money to fix these problems.
I thought it showed a shocking lack of understanding about how education works.
Very shallow understanding.
And
Obviously, he
You know.
doesn't pay taxes either because, you know, if you pay taxes, you understand where your money is going. But, you know, if
Right.
you're a renter or you don't live in the area or whatever, you're not paying the taxes, you have no clue as to the impact of that.
Well,
that.
my understanding is he should know. But
Well, that doesn't mean he uses intelligence. So
Right.
it doesn't sound to me like he used very much intelligence.
I mean, and then some of the candidates that are running, some of the new candidates, the DFL endorsed candidates they are saying, well, I want to make Duluth the best school district in the state.
So how would you?
We all do, but
How would you address that if that statement was made to you? How would you address that? How do we make this the best educational system in the state of Minnesota? Right now, we're one of the worst. So how do we pull us from the worst to the best?
we're not
Or
quite
someplace in between?
I think we're 278 out of 4 or something.
No, that's not very good.
No, it's not. It's not a good number, and no one's out there, you know, yelling, "We're 278," you know. But we have to address the budget because the budget is such a driver of education. I mean, we can't offer programs. We can't fix the course offerings that we're not giving out west and we are giving out east. We can't just do that without money. And that's depressing, but I think bringing someone in to do a line-by-line audit of our spending, someone independent, not the state. The state has done it in the past, but I think they're mostly looking to see if the books balance, and that if you look at your credit card statement, you want to see if your payment's been applied. That doesn't tell you what the charges are. And I think we need somebody to look at it. There are companies that will come in on a contingency with an eye on trying to save money if we can do that without affecting staff or hurting students, I think that'd be a great thing. You know, because I think we're probably spending some money that we could find savings, but that's not going to fix the whole budget problem.
Well, you know, I find this a small, just such a minuscule part of the budget, but I've attended community education classes. I feel like I'm always wanting to learn. And so I got this glitzy paper where at one time it was all on newsprint. Got this glitzy production this year, and I thought, well, I wonder how much this costs when they mail it out to all the residents in the 709 school district. How much did that cost for us to look real nice in the public? I was perfectly fine with black and white description of, I don't need pictures, you know. So it seems to me that somebody is not making wise decisions. They want to look good in the public for whatever reason, but they're not using practical decisions to save money. And then I filmed it, and since my soil and water office, which I'm an elected official, we meet on the 3rd floor of this old Central High School, they put this $40,000+ benched area in the center of the hallway between the different offices up on that 3rd floor. It cost $40,000. It's the most beautiful oak bench with elaborate glass above it, and it's hardly used. This is from the staff in that building. It's hardly used. Where did they get the money appropriated out of the classroom or wherever to build this thing a few years ago? I mean, I was floored when I started researching it. And that's just a couple of small things. I know there's a lot of waste in a lot of other areas. They got smart boards in every single classroom, and many of those classrooms are never used.
Right.
So we put all that money into smart boards for that technology to become obsolete in a few years. So that was another waste in the red plan's money. And so, you know, I think if
Absolutely.
you started looking at things, you could find an incredible amount of money that is wasted and should be going into the proper channels, which is, of course, the classroom.
Absolutely. There's been too much business as usual. And given our financial situation, we can't afford business as usual. We have to start looking at a lot more closely on how we spend our money and what we're spending it on, and we have to really look at our priorities, because we need the money in the classroom. I mean, this is what comes with the red plan, with ignoring any sort of contrary voice. I mean, they were labeled as opponents of the lead plan, when in reality, they had some misgivings and some questions about it, and they weren't all bad questions, and they're questions that should have been considered. And I don't take any glee in saying it, but they were right in a lot of cases, and we're finding that out now. And our current financial situation with getting downgraded with the Moody's bond, for bonds we need to sell next month to do the Rockridge upgrade for Woodland Hills, and we're rated just barely above a junk bond, and a junk bond is a bond that is not investment grade. And
so investors are not going to want to put their money into it, is that correct?
It's considered speculative, when it gets down into junk bond status, and I think it will be harder to sell them. You can always find somebody to buy them, I guess, but it's going to cost us a lot more. The lower your rating, the more interest you're going to have to pay.
So we'll have an increase in that, potentially we would have an increase in the interest from what we have now.
That's my understanding.
Oh, that's not very comforting.
But this is what comes of doing things in secret and having no transparency, ignoring data requests. This is what happens. I mean, and the taxpayers have a perfect right to know where and how their money is being spent, and it's just honest and respectful for that information to be given to them. And it's public information.
Yeah, I don't think public information, I'm not talking about just this school district, but I'm involved in other areas as well. I don't think public information is, well, I know it is. It's totally disregarded today in comparison to several years ago. And I think a lot of that is a responsibility, I will say irresponsibility of the public, because they're too busy with their lives and everything else except watching your county and your city and your school districts and other public entities.
Right.
As a soil and water conservation district supervisor, when I ran, I'm in my 13th year, I'll be one more, and I'll be up for election again next year. People didn't even know what soil and water conservation districts were, and I said, neither do I. And as soon as I find out, I'll tell you. But there's another authority that gets taxpayer dollars. And so most people, and I would say some of this is part of the school's responsibilities. I know when I had civics, it was the most boring class there was. And it was because my teacher did not make it interesting. When I home educated my children, they went to a courtroom when I had to appear for a speeding ticket. So they got an
Teachable
idea.
moment.
Yes, they got an idea what it was like to be in a courtroom. And I think we could certainly do that in our public educational systems. We could be taking these kids to these city council meetings or what have you. We've got plenty of civics opportunities. So people would maybe get more involved in it. So it's part and part the irresponsibility of the educational system, as well as the public's apathy. But when I followed what Art Johnston was doing on the data practices stuff, and he was denied at every level right up to the governor of the state of Minnesota, it's like there's no authority over school districts, and they do not have to answer data practice requests or freedom of information. They are not within that realm of watchdog that they have to give that stuff over, which I think is extremely pathetic when you figure it's our tax dollars. And so I think there needs to be some kind of a push to change that, not necessarily people that get on the school district, but others that need to go after that and say, that's our tax dollars. And yeah, Art has been fiercely trying to get that information, and he's been backed down every single step of the way.
Unfortunately, that is exactly how it works. I mean, the state refuses to enforce the law, and They depend on the school boards to watch over the superintendent, which is their number one job after hiring him and evaluating him, is to be a watchdog for the taxpayers over the superintendent to make sure money is being spent wisely and is going where it should be going. And they can direct him, he's their employee, they can direct him to release that information, but our current board majority refuses to do that. And I read an article the other day that was from years ago. It was in the Xena City News, and the last sentence kind of caught my eye, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said that the current board majority believes their job is to communicate the administration and superintendent's needs and wants to the public, when in reality that's completely on its head. They're there to communicate the taxpayers and the community's needs and wants and concerns to the administration. And that is the crux of the problem here, because they side with administration every time. And with the way things are going, and talking to Lauren Martell, he believes that if things don't change, and soon, within 5 years we'll be in statutory operating debt.
And he's been saying that for 10 years.
Yeah.
I mean, he saw the big picture from the very beginning. And
he hasn't been saying in 5 years for 10 years, has he?
Well,
I don't know, he might have been.
he warned.
And
he warned that a potential problem was down the road,
yeah,
by doing the red plan all at one time. Now, whether he put it into the words that like you just said or not, he was warning what the potential problem was going to be. And unfortunately, what he had to say, it is coming to fruition. And yeah, are we still on the train track to destruction, or can we stop it? And hopefully with this election and these candidates like yourself getting out there and trying to talk to the public, we need to do everything we can to change the cheerleading status of the school board members, because that is not their job to kowtow to what the superintendent and the administration is saying.
Right.
They need to say, this is what you're going to do. And one of the candidates that was contending when Ivy Foster was eventually put into that short term that he had, the one was from Brainerd, and he said, if I am selected as your superintendent, I want you to know I'm not the boss. You are my boss. I will be taking my orders from you. Not to micromanage the system,
right.
but the directives come from the school board.
Well, they should, and then the goals should come from the school. The board should be making goals for the superintendent, for the district, and for itself, and they refuse to do that. And there's been members on the board. I know Alana Oswald has brought that up many times, and it just doesn't get any traction because they don't listen to the minority. They often don't inform the minority about things, and things that people in the majority know. I mean, things school board related stuff, you know. And as I said, that this is what comes from doing things behind closed doors, and it needs to change.
Well, having said all that, now let's just very quickly summarize. Do you have some goal ideas? And I know that making promises as a candidate is not smart.
No.
But do you have some goals that after elected you would try to achieve, that you would shoot for to try to make some changes?
Well, we have to look at this pragmatically, and we're in a bad financial situation, and we need to take that seriously. And you know, I'm not there to point here or there to point fingers at whose fault it is. It's the situation we find ourselves in. But if we don't change the power structure on the board and in the superintendent's office, nothing's going to change. And that's what I think we need to do, along with bringing someone in, possibly MDE, Minnesota Department of Education, in to help us. If we don't change what we're doing, we're not going to have any choice about that, because they're going to come in and they're going to tell us what to do.
Oh, so it could boil down to that.
It could very well boil down to that, because
It seems that they've had basically a hands-off approach all along, though. So how is it that they could just step right in now? And because
Well, like our Office of Education Equity, we have at Meyer Wilkins we have a racially identifiable school, and when that happens, MDE comes in and works with the district and makes a 3-year plan to try to solve the problems. And we just ended a 3-year plan, and we didn't meet any of the benchmarks.
oh my,
And so now MDE is coming back in, and they're going to take 15% of that budget, and they're going to tell us where that money is going to go.
okay.
So they do actually step in and get proactive when it's necessary. It's embarrassing for our community and for our district, but we may not have any say in it. And if things continue the way they have been, we either end up in statutory operating debt or bankruptcy. I don't know.
Has this been made public? I certainly have heard nothing of that Myers-Wilkins situation,
Oh yeah,
perhaps.
the report is on the district's website.
Okay, but has it been dealt with through the public media that we have here in this community?
I really don't know. They did report the MCA scores, which
That's nothing, though.
were not very good either. I mean, we've had 20 plus years of DFL endorsed boards and more than 7 years of this superintendent, and we're not making any significant progress.
What about out at the Laura MacArthur School, which was so very bad, and when you have 2 years, 3 years now, I've kind of lost track of time, teachers from Denfeld, I knew both the young men there, call them young men because they technically are, math and sciences in 11th grade. They're getting kids with a 5th grade education at Denfeld in the 11th grade of their school years. I mean, this is the waning years of their time in the public educational system. What is the school district going to do about it? Well, they didn't get any answers. I don't think it's changed. But 5th grade education, getting through 8 years, going to the 9th grade at Denfeld, and you've got a 5th grade reading and math education. So Laura MacArthur was one of those really bad schools. I don't know, I haven't read any more on whether or not that's changed. We don't hear anything about that, but you can certainly see. And you know something, that is not just a race disparity situation.
No.
That was all students.
Yeah, 27% were at level in, I believe in math at Denfeld.
Oh my goodness.
And that's shameful, because we have a legal, but more importantly, a moral obligation to teach our children and give them the best education we can. And 27% isn't doing that. There's a lot of kids that are slipping through the cracks here and not getting a full education. And that's one of the biggest things we need to address.
Well, I talked with one of the candidates who's running for at large, and she's a chemistry professor or teacher or whatever up at UMD, and I asked her that question about being prepared, and she said the foreign students are coming here, they're bright, they're smart, and they're fully prepared, and many of our students do not really have the same skills as they do. And they're coming out of this district, perhaps other districts as well. I've talked to the people at Lake Superior College, Superior, UWS, St. Scholastica. All these have said that they're needing 2 years of remedial work. Now, that's deplorable. I went out of Denfeld with a full education. I didn't go on to college. I went through business school and got a job. I was not inadequate to get out there and get any kind of job I wanted to, and yet these children are. I mean, students, I shouldn't say children, these students are that way. And so, yes, our district is not doing the job they're supposed to be doing. And unfortunately for these that are so undereducated, what's going to happen to them? What is their choices in life? Will it be drugs? Will it be crime? Will it be prostitution? And then prison? What? You know,
This is the pipeline to prison. And working in corrections, I had direct contact with that, and it obviously we need to address it, because I don't, I mean, we're taking money, compensatory money that the state gives us. It's based on free and reduced lunch population, and Western schools get a larger amount, but our district is taking some of that money and putting it out east to try to kind of equalize the amount each one gets, ostensibly to lower class sizes. But the bottom line is we're taking money from students that need it most and we're giving it to students with less need. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think it is in the spirit of what the money was intended for. And I don't think it reflects our community's values.
And I heard the superintendent say why they did it when these parents were complaining from the Denfeld area.
He inherited it. We've always done it that way. I wouldn't accept that excuse from my children.
Well, not only that, but the language does not say you have to give it to that school.
Right.
You may. And the word may gives a long stretch as to what you will do with it if you choose to do that. That, to me, is criminal.
It's unfortunate that that's baked right into the law. It's basically an opt-in, opt-out, baked right into the law.
Oh my.
Which is just kind of, I won't use that kind of language, but
Pathetic? How is that?
Yeah, it is pathetic, and
our students are suffering for that.
And the board voted unanimously back in June to keep that money in the schools, and they directed our superintendent to come up with a plan, and we still haven't seen anything.
So this year, coming into this new school year, there's nothing changed, even though the board voted on it.
As far as I know. I mean, the budget process apparently starts in January, but this isn't something that you can just toss into, a budget process, which is a big thing with a lot of moving parts. We should have been working on this. He should have been working on this.
Well, we just have a few minutes left. The time has gone quickly, Kurt. But I just want to thank you so much for running, and I wish you the best on November 7th. And now, folks, it's up to you as voters in this Duluth School District to choose wisely. The polls are open at 7 and they close at 8 o'clock on November 7th. Don't sit home and complain about the district and what's going on. Get out there and vote and make wise choices for the upcoming school year and for the students and the future of the Duluth area. Thanks very much for coming in, Kurt.
Thank you for having me.
Great to have you here.
I appreciate it. Thanks.